That's it, enough. I had enough now. Welcome back. Last time we defeated Modder, and now it's time to take on the 5th boss, Yagluth. Let's see what happened before we finally managed to bring him down. The area where I had my mountain outpost bordered some plains as well, so I decided to spend a little time to scouting around the new biome and getting a feel of it before fully committing to it. As I was going through, I realized there are two creatures you're almost guaranteed to run into. Those are Deathsquitos and Fulings. Deathsquitos hit surprisingly hard at this point of the game. They ideally hit around 20 points piercing damage, which is a decent chunk of your health at that time. Luckily, once I figured out their attack pattern, they become much easier to deal with. The only time they really caused problems were after I died and I was trying to recover my corpse. Fulings, on the other hand, oh boy, they are just annoying like Great-Offs. They're always running around, that is causing you to just run after them, and they try to get behind you. In the beginning they hit extremely hard. If you're not paying attention, they can easily overwhelm you, but later on, once you get a gear, they just become much more manageable. So the first few encounters are definitely a struggle, but after it's gonna be fine. Now, I'm not sure where I've seen it or read about it, but Lux is supposed to be peaceful. So I thought I'd go and stand next to one of them, and then quickly realised that isn't exactly true. As I was standing there, they were happy to introduce themselves with a nice little attack that hits like a truck. After my little scouting trip, collected a few new materials, I head back to the main base to see what other new resources actually unlocked. Receiving the dragon tears from Modder is unlocked the artisan table, so I created that one. And once I actually crafted that, it gave me access to a few new crafting stations. I was able to craft even ballista ammunition, but still today I don't know what is that used for, but I'm hoping there's going to be a ballista later on. But the other things was quite useful. You got a new blast furnace. That is the only place where you can actually smell the black iron as well, the black metal. So yeah, I needed that. So once I crafted all the new station, I thought it was worth paying another visit to the traders to see if anything new became available. There were still a few recipes I hadn't unlocked, so I ended up buying everything I hadn't purchased before. One of those was my very first site. Unfortunately, it only can be used for farming. It looks cool, but only for farming. While I was experimenting with all the new plains creatures, I also decided to hunt down the logs to see what they're going to drop, and maybe a couple more recipes is going to be unlocked. But that was the last bit for a while. After that, most of my time was spent upgrading the base and doing the usual resource run. During one of those trips, I stumbled across another frost cave. This one was a little bit different. Eugen actually warned me that it was a bit more dangerous than the others. So naturally, I took things nice and slowly. It was everything 1 star. And as I explored further inside, I eventually found what looked like a mini-boss. I had a quick look at it and immediately thought, nope. I decided to come back later with better food and preparation. But that was the plan, since at that time I was a bit running low of everything. And in the end I never actually went back. After spending what felt like forever upgrading the base, I decided I wanted to tame some wolves. Luckily, my main base island had a small section of mountain biome nearby, so I didn't have to transfer wolves half across the world by boat, thank for that. That lucky word generation saved me a massive amount of time. So I found a nice stone structure on the side of the biome that I repaired up, spent a little time to repairing it, making a couple of walls on it and such. Then dig the pit around it beside it and try to figure out the best way to get the wolves inside. At first I assumed they would simply chase me into the hole. Well, turns out they are smarter than that. Well, I had to give them a few gentle encouragement until they eventually fell into the hole. Once they were trapped, all that was left was the waiting for them to tame. But that was one thing that worried me, realistically. That if one of them is tamed earlier than the other one, will they attack each other and making my time to trying to get two wolves at the same time tamed worthless. But thankfully, that never happened. They behaved themselves perfectly, which meant I only had to sit through the 30-40 minute taming process once. I even managed to die one time just to try to protect them, to make sure no one kills them. So, I was true to my word, I got these dwarfs. With the dwarves finally tamed, I headed back to the base and started upgrading the rest of my gear. I even crossed the frost now. I just heard some good things about it, so I thought I'm gonna give it a go. And one of the Fulings was throwing spears at me, so I was like, oh, I didn't know you can throw a spear, so I was like, let's try it. So I actually did craft another spear, but when I tried out, I decided it's not really for me. And out of curiosity, I even made one of the polearms as well to see how that's gonna work out. Once everything was sorted, it was time to head over to the next island, where a much larger plains beam was waiting. Rather than taking my longship, I built a small raft. Now don't get me wrong, I love the longship. It's compared to all the other boats, it is one of the best ones, and I can understand why you're getting so late. And the raft on the other hand is painfully slow. But thankfully I only needed to short across a stretch of water, so it shouldn't be any problem. So as the sun came up, I set off for a short journey. Everything was going surprisingly well, apart from that leech that seemed determined to follow me to the entire way. Halfway across the water, I spotted something I'd never seen before, a leviathan. I thought it was incredibly cool, so naturally I jumped off the raft and started mining the strange metal on its back. What I did not know was that if you start mining these, it starts to shake first, but as for the first two, it's not gonna go down. After I'd got like 4 of them, I mined 4 of them and it started to sink. Now that definitely caught me by surprise. Completely panicked, tried to get back to the raft, missed the jump, landed next to it, the leech was hitting me, so it was too late already. And I died in one of the stupidest way possible, floating right next to the raft. It just looks bad. But it was another recovery mission now on, and that time I just took the longship with me. So once I got my longship, I was off to the journey to retrieve my corpse. And the wind was still refusing to cooperate, as sometimes it just turned 180 in a single second. He was just like, yeah, no, I'm going with the other way. But I eventually got back to my grave. Stopping the longship exactly next to it, well, that wasn't the easiest thing. You cannot just anchor down and it stops in there. It's going to keep continuously move. But eventually I grabbed everything back and I said to myself, I leave the raft, I don't care, that's in the middle of the ocean. If it's get wrecked, I don't mind. But I was like, the longship, that one is gonna come with me. Once I finally arrived in the island, I immediately ran into Hildir. Luckily for me, there was also a Fuling tower nearby. Even better, this tower had a Fuling totem sitting on a pedestal. I already knew I'm going to need a few of these, so finding this early felt like a great start. After clearing the tower, I decided to claim it as a new plains outpost. since both flax and barley can only be grown in the plains. Having a small little base right at the edge was really perfect location for that kind of set. So after I just repaired the tower, digged around the moat as you usually do, and I placed the porcelain into it, so it was ready to become my new little outpost. Just as I finished setting everything up, I noticed the Fuling village not too far away. I thought I'd make start to clearing it out, just to make sure maybe I'll find. Obviously I needed barley and flax that time. But just as I was engaged with the first few Fulings and they're running out, like 5 or 6 of them, I got the event called "You're being hunted." I was like, perfect timing, great, now I got wolves after me as well. Luckily my base was only a few meters away, so I sprinted straight back to it. The moat ended up doing all of the hard work, since you can jump through, but mobs cannot jump. So all the wolves was like waiting for me to get everything picked out one by one. And their Fuling was the same. To be fair, I need to give some credit to Frostnare, because in the beginning when there was loads of them coming around, having the slowing effect is actually made a massive difference. So I'm definitely giving a thumbs up to Frostnare. Once the hunt was over, I went back to the Fuling village and cleared out properly, taking it nice and slowly, because everyone is still hitting really bad. But by the end of it, I had both barley and flax from that single village. So with that village, now we were at the point where the only thing we need to do is wait for the flax to be able to craft the padded armor. And then obviously searching for the remaining Fuling totems. So that's pretty much what happened in the next time, but I did realize that was one of the plains resources I still haven't collected yet, and that was tar. I assumed it would be something fairly straightforward, maybe like a little of fighting the blobs from the swamp. I could have been more wrong. The growths guarding the tar pits hit way much harder than you would expect at the first time, plus they slow you. So my first encounter with them it ended exactly how everyone would thought. I died. Well, after that, I knew to treat them with a little bit more respect if I found another tar pit. With most of the plane's resources now unlocked, I started planning for the final equipment and the final upgrades. I knew I need a lot more iron, and I also heard that the root chest piece was excellent against Deathsquitos. So I decided to craft it and upgrade it to see whether it was really worth using. Since I was already heading back into the swamp for more iron, I figured as well I might just hunt a couple more abomination while I was there. And to my surprise, that chest armor is actually really good. It significantly decreases the damage what Deathsquitos are doing for you. But for the next few hours, my gameplay was settled into a nice rhythm of like harvesting the crops in the plains, then mining the iron in the swamp, and then I collected a little bit more silver to be able to upgrade my Frostmare, and occasionally reminded myself that iron golems were still just as annoying as they always been, just like the trolls in the beginning. And maybe one day it will be easier to kill them, but that wasn't that time. Around the same time, I also started to looking into some better food recipes. That's when I discovered Feast. Being able to eat from the same meal 10 times and receive a 50-minute buff rather than a 25 one was far more efficient than constantly carrying stacks of individual food. It ended up saving both time and resources, which was a welcome surprise for me. With my resources starting to pile up and the gear finally coming together, it was time to spend a lot more time properly exploring the plains. There were still plenty of Fuling scabs left to clear, and more importantly, I still needed the Fuling totems to summon Yagluth. Along the way, I started to running into Fuling shamans. These guys are a little different from the regular Fulings. Not only they can throw fireballs at you, but they can also place shields on nearby enemies and on themselves, making much harder to hit them. And to be fair, sometimes the bows just don't really want to hit them at all. That immediately made me wonder if the beam was going to be the fire resistance made really become important. I remember one time I opened the kettle and I thought to myself, shall I brew some? Because I was just like looking through what are the new meats what we get, and my eyes got hooked onto the fire resistance one. But that's some reason that time I just decided I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I had the short end for that thing as well, because that was a couple of times when the shamans just killed me because of that. During one of my exploration, I came across a large stone edge. Inside was the rune stone pointing towards Yagluth's summoning altar. Now I'd already seen where it was, using the Wordseed viewer, but it felt much more satisfying finding it properly in game. It made the whole journey feel a little bit more legitimate. From there it was back to searching every Fuling village I could find. If you ever played a game where you're looking for a specific item, this is exactly the same. It's everywhere. The moment you're looking for something, becomes impossible to find it. From what I read, Berserkers had around 10% chance to drop a Fuling totem. Fuling towers can sometimes contain one, that's what we had in the beginning, and bonfires have roughly 50% of chance of spawning next to one. At least that was the wiki saying, although I'm not sure how much I trust those numbers anymore. The first one came fairly quickly from the Fuling tower next to Hildir. The second one came from another from the Stone Age, that was actually caught me by surprise, because supposedly there's only 2.8% chance that they can have in the chest a totem. And after that, nothing. Nothing for nearly 4 hours. I searched village after village, explored another island, cleared more camps. I even took a break from the search and decided to drop a couple of loxes. That just to break it up a little bit. That was that much. I did not tame the loxes yet. I just dropped some food next to them to keep them there. But yeah, they are nice in that hole. Eventually, after what felt like forever, they slowly started to drop in one by one. In the end, I finally had all the 5 totems. Funny part is, the moment I defeated Yagluth and started recording the Mistlands episode, I found three totems next to each camp. But in a single camp next to all of the bonfires. They are sitting next to each other, the 3 of them. It's typical. Since I already placed an extra portal on the neighbouring island while exploring, I simply moved it closer to Yagluth's summoning altar. There was a Fuling village nearby, so I placed the portal there. That way, if things went wrong, I'd be able to recover my gear much more quickly. Looking back, that turned out to be a very good decision, because I ended up making quite a few trips through that portal. With all the 5 Fuling totems finally collected, my armor was upgraded, food prepared, supplies packed, there was only one thing left to do. It was finally time to face Yagluth. One small detail, I accidentally left my root armor equipped. That mistake would become important very quickly. Before summoning the boss, I tried to make the battlefield as safe as possible. Killed the nearby loxes, checked the surrounding area. Noticed there was a tar pit a little bit further away and thought, that's far enough, it shouldn't become a problem. Yeah, that's my famous last words. The fight itself actually started really well. Yagluth is quite different from the previous bosses. He doesn't really have a traditional melee attack. Instead, most of his damage comes from powerful fire-based abilities, fire and electric-based abilities. He has a quick fire breath that sweeps around him, a slower fire breath that you can simply walk out of it, a huge ground explosion, and of course, the meteor attack. So rather than waiting for opportunities between melee swings like the earlier bosses, the fight became much more about recognizing his animations and knowing when it is safe to move in. For a while, everything was going according to plan. Then the groves from the nearby tar pit decided they wanted to join. That was where my first death happened. I managed to pull Yagluth away from them, thinking that would solve the problem. Instead, we wandered out into the open plains, which meant the Fulings started to join the fight itself. Honestly, I expected something like that. If anything, I thought Yagluth might even summon Fulings himself. They are supposed to worship him after all. That's their god. What I wasn't expecting was a group of Loxes that had been peacefully wandering in the distance to suddenly decide that my boss fight looked interesting enough to join. At that point, it genuinely felt every creature in the plains had received an invitation to this battle. It was a complete chaos. And yes, that was the point where I finally broke as well, and I needed a break. I stepped away from the game for a little while, calmed down, and came back later with a fresh mindset. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do. When I came back, I decided if the plains wanted to fight dirty, then I would stop making my life harder for myself as well. Thankfully, I placed the portal nice and close to the summoning altar, so getting back into the fight didn't take that long. I mean, to be honest, I just rage quitted and closed the game, so I was back in the middle. This time I switched over to frost arrows. They gave me a much safer way to dealing damage while I learned Yagluth attack patterns. As the fight dragged on, we slowly made our way towards the edge of the biome. Even then, one random Lox still managed to wander close enough to get involved. At this point I wasn't even surprised anymore, since I was using the portal so often to head back home, repair my gear and brew more potion, that the same Lox eventually decided to stand right at the entrance to my portal. It was almost like it figured out exactly what I was doing. Was trying to stop me from using it. One thing I noticed quite quickly was the meteor attack. If you ignore the meteors and simply keep moving sideways thinking they're never gonna hit you, there is a really good chance one of them at least will hit you. But if you actually look up and watch where they are falling, they are surprisingly easy to avoid. You can literally just walk to the side and they're never gonna hit you. Then it was something else I noticed with fire damage. I hope that simply stepping into a shallow water or some kind of water, it would immediately put out the burning effect. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You actually have to swim before the fire is extinguished. A small detail, but one I found out on the hard way. The fight itself turned into a real battle of endurance. By the time everything was over, we'd been fighting for an hour. Don't worry, I'm definitely not going to make you watch the entire thing. Once I started running low on potions and I had to slow things down and fight a bit more carefully, I actually locked in. Eventually I found the good rhythm that worked for me. I would fire a few frost arrows while closing the distance, wait for Yagluth to use his grand explosion, dodge backwards, run back in, land a couple of fray hits, 2 or 3 of them with the frost near. And as soon as he's raising his left hand, I knew the meteors were coming, so running out, looking up where the meteors are gonna hit. It wasn't a quick fight. It wasn't an easy fight. But by little, his health bar kept getting smaller. And I'll be completely honest, this was easily the toughest boss fight I had so far, compared to all the others. I think I ended up dying around 15 times before it was finally over. My skill definitely took a bit of a beating. I don't know if I ever actually see one of them reach level 100 at this rate, but honestly, that's part of the adventure. Every mistake teaches you something, and by the end of the fight, I understood Yagluth far more better than when I summoned him. Eventually, after everything the plains has thrown at me, the final blow landed, and Yagluth was dead. That was incredibly satisfying. Not because it'd been easy, but because I finally overcome it. With the battle finished, there was only one thing left to do. I picked up Yagluth's trophy, headed back to the sacrificial stones, and hung it alongside the others. 5 bosses down. Only the Mistland and the Ashlands remain. Thank you all so much for coming along on this journey. I really hope you've been enjoying watching me slowly learn Valheim as much as I've been enjoying playing it. I'll see you all in the next episode.